to the latest now from Russia, where that plane crashed that allegedly killed Vladimir Putin's former advisor and rival, Yevgeny Prigozhin. Now, that crash killed 10 people. It happened on Wednesday, just 2 months after Prigozhin led a mutiny against an attempted mutiny against Russia. Now, yesterday, U.S. officials said that the crash could be part of, quote, Putin's long history of trying to silence his critics. And again today, the Kremlin denied any involvement in this crash. I want to bring in Bill Browder now. He is in London, UK, and is head of the Global Magnitsky Justice Campaign, also CEO of Hermitage Capital Management and author of Freezing Order, a true story of money laundering, murder, and surviving Vladimir Putin's wrath. It's a pleasure to have you on the show, sir.
Great to be here.
When you heard about this crash, what was your first thought?
Well, my first thought was, whoa, this is pretty hardcore stuff. I mean, to shoot a plane out of the sky and to have the image of the plane falling out of the sky is a pretty dramatic way to assassinate a rival. So that was my first reaction. My second reaction was, why did it take Putin 2 months to do this? And this Yevgeny Prigozhin committed the most grave crime as far as Putin was concerned, which is challenging his authority in a military way. Why did it take him 2 months? But at the end of the day, I have no doubt that this was an assassination ordered and organized by Vladimir Putin. I have no doubt that the more they deny it, the more certain that it goes straight to the top. And I have no doubt that this is just the beginning of a purge of everybody who is connected to Prigozhin. It's not just going to be him.
Wow. You asked the question I was going to ask. Why did it take 2 months? Is there anything that, you would think it was?
Well, I think the main reason it took 2 months is, first of all, Putin is a very careful guy. He's not good at in the moment situation. So in the moment when it was all happening, he didn't know, he was sort of panicked. He didn't know what to do, but he's very good at sort of cold, calculating, conniving revenge. That's his big hallmark. He has all these resources and they study carefully and they research how, the habits of the person they're going after. And so and generally, I would argue that when Putin does a hit, it can take a lot longer than 2 months. I mean, they were surveilling Alexei Navalny before they poisoned him with Novichok for many, many months. And so, I mean, in a certain way, this was actually a relatively accelerated revenge assassination because they really wanted to get this guy. But every day that went by during that 2 months was another day of humiliation for Putin, which I think is why they needed to get it done.
Yeah, you talk about that humiliation for Putin. That's, exactly, how we were looking at it too. But now, do you think this re-energizes Putin?
Well, I think what it does is it instills fear in everybody around him. That he was looking a bit like, you could get away with stuff when Prigozhin had gotten away with this failed mutiny. And now what it shows all these people is that Putin is, yes, the dangerous, malicious, murderous thug that everybody thought he was. And anybody who is considering, having a go at him is probably reconsidering it now. And so it achieves a very important objective, which is it reestablishes his brutality, which is how he's been able to govern the country for the last 23 years.
So would you say that he has more power now because of this?
I would say that the risk of somebody going after him has been diminished. I think you have to think of Russia as being like a prison yard, a really brutal prison yard. And you have to think of Putin as being the guy who entered that prison yard, the little guy who entered that prison yard and with a shank and went after the biggest guy in the yard and just stabbed him repeatedly and with blood everywhere to show all the other prisoners in the prison yard that that's what could happen to them. And then he established himself as the head of the prison yard. That's what Russia's like. That's what Putin does from time to time with these crimes, these assassinations, etc. And I think he's achieved that goal with this particular assassination by making it so visible, so awful, and so clear that it was him that nobody else will touch him for a while.
You have said Putin is a man that never forgives. He never forgets. Who would you say is now concerned for their life?
Well, I think that anybody who has any connection to the Prigozhin mutiny, anyone in the Wagner Group at the senior level should be worried. Anybody who was not pledging their allegiance to Putin as Prigozhin was marching towards Rostov and Voronezh and Moscow should be very concerned, because those people are probably going to all be purged, either killed or put in jail. I imagine the bodies will rack up. I think also there may be those people that start to do preemptive killings of their own, and so I can imagine that you have bodies racking up on both sides. It's a very brutal place, Russia. I mean, it's something that we can't even imagine in our civilized, rule-abiding countries in the West.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. But is there a chance that maybe Putin is backing himself in a corner as well with something like this with Russians?
Well, I think what Putin has done is backed himself into a corner by invading Ukraine. This whole thing comes about as a reaction to the failed military success that Russia hoped that they would have, that Putin hoped he would have. The more soldiers that die, the more equipment that gets destroyed, the more territory that the Ukrainians retake, the more humiliated Russia is as a country. And it doesn't matter how many internal enemies Putin kills inside of Russia. That situation is he can't stop it. This is just a question of the balance of power. And the more Russia loses, the more people second guess and the more people get angry. And sometimes the people are second guessing on the wrong side. Prigozhin is not some type of dissident. He wanted to bomb Ukraine even more than Putin did. He wanted to be doing more terrible things than Putin did. And so, but the more Ukraine succeeds, the more strife and internal struggle there'll be in Russia, and the more Putin's power is put at risk, no matter how tough he thinks he is in Russia.